All right. Welcome, everyone, to our special event where I interview someone involving the movie industry. Today, we have here Sean, or Dancing Sean, Sean Pink, who is a critic and content creator. He has his own channel, Dancing Sean, and he does stuff with History of Westeros. But Sean, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, where to start? That's a big question. I'm a big fan of, I want to say film, but TV too. Especially I think these days TV is kind of the quality of types of TV shows quantity of TV shows is increased, and I think it's competing with movies as far as I don't know, impact on culture or worthwhile watching this or whatever. I think a lot of times in the past, like movies were like the real stars and the big directors win. TV was the side thing, but it's almost almost switching around.
Yeah, I
But
think it
anyway,
has.
yeah. Um, but when I was in school studying literature, I felt like everything I was learning about themes and character and plot and allegory and all these elements that might be in a novel or poetry or whatever. I'm like, well, that's all in movies too. I tried to apply all that to some movies, and this isn't wrong or bad, but some movies are pretty much just entertainment, right? It's
Yeah,
just
yeah,
action. It's cool. It's fun. There's chase scenes and explosions and comedy or whatever. But some movies are trying to like evoke deep emotions or make commentary on human nature or society or whatever. There's a difference between I don't know, Fast and Furious 5 and Schindler's List. Uh, and uh, and even if one is quote unquote better than the other, it doesn't mean you can't like one or the other. There's a wide variety of stuff out there. I tend
yeah,
personally to like and care more and think it's more important to see the quote unquote serious dramas or whatever. But I understand a lot of effort and a lot of talent and a lot of passion goes into something like Fast and Furious. There's a lot of the stunts and there's a budget. It's a whole thing. It's a,
yeah.
it's a collaborative effort to make a movie and a TV show or whatever. But anyway, I have always sort of had this interest in me, and uh, working at Blockbuster, that wasn't diminished any.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and I've watched a lot of movies, and I've made a point of trying to like watch them with a critical eye, trying to see all the classics and the greats and all the top whatever lists, and there's so many to see. I haven't done it yet, but I'm trying to watch everything on AFI's top 100. Everything's won Best Picture. Everything on and on. But
Now, quick
and
thing.
anyway, lately I've been shifting that gear to television as well.
Yeah.
What's that?
So I kind of want to make sure people are aware. Some people, when they watch a lot of movies, it's like 20. Other people who watch movies is like 100 or 200 or even 1,000. What do you think your estimate is about how many movies you have watched?
I know it pretty closely. It's around 2,900. It's like 2,845 or
Right.
somewhere around there. Like
So,
there's probably some that slipped through the cracks that I haven't accounted for.
yeah.
Excuse me.
You watched a variety, obviously. That's a huge number if you think about it. So,
In fact, excuse me. Let me take a minute to plug. There's a website called Flickchart, which has also affected me in my mentality and my opinions and my thought processes and my I don't know, my analyzation, both of film and of myself, like how I make decisions or what it is I'm looking for. Sorry.
that's fine. John's feeling a little under the weather, so sorry about this. Not his fault, obviously.
Yes, sorry. Trying to mute it when I cough. I have a little bit. Yeah, I'm a little bit sick right now, but it's not going to stop me from talking about what I love, right?
Absolutely.
So Flickchart, the way it works is it just presents you with two movies, and you pick one over the other. And then it presents you with two more. You pick one over the other. You also have the option to say you haven't seen one or haven't seen either, and it'll bring you two different ones. And slowly as you do this, it shuffles them into order, So if it shows you movie A and movie B, and you pick A, now your order is A, B. And it shows you movie C and movie D, and you pick C, and then it'll be A, C, B, D, or whatever. And obviously, we've only ranked 4 movies. It's almost meaningless, But after you do it a few dozen or 100 times, you start to get a sort of an order, and it's still a little bit random because that's a small sample size. But because like let's say you've seen 100 movies, even if it presented you pairings of all 100 of those movies, first two that it showed you, it still might not be like your favorite and your least favorite. You still need to shuffle it into order, you know.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's a time sink. It takes a lot of time, but it's a really good method coming up with your top movies and keeping track of every movie you've seen. Every time I see a movie, I try to go plug it in and rank it on that chart.
Yeah.
You can also like rank your top 20 or your top 100, or you can maybe you can filter it in a million ways. You can do it by decade or whatever. And it's also really valuable because then you can see, like, if you put a lot of time and effort into it, like I have, for better or worse, you can figure out what your top movies of the 90s are, or your top comedies, your top, whatever filter you want to put in there. But it's a really good way to get you to think about what and why you like something, or how to rank it. I think a lot about the nature of lists. Like, there's a difference between a favorite movie or there's at least potentially a difference between what my favorite movie is and what I think the best movie is, and what I might most recommend to somebody, or what I think maybe is the most important movie, or top 10 movies or whatever.
Yeah.
There's little differences in those, and I've made my flick chart list sort of a conglomerate of them.
Mm-hmm.
And in the beginning, when I was ranking, I would just, like, when I got to one, it was like a tough decision, I would just skip it, just refresh the page. But I've gotten to the point now where, like, no, I want to make this tough decision. I want to, like, figure out, like, I have to choose. Why is it that I'm picking, I don't know, Saving Private Ryan over Full Metal Jacket or something like that? What's the difference? And there's different standards you might have, and your standards might change over time. But thinking about that type of thing is interesting. That's more interesting to me than what actually the decision ends up being. It's more interesting how you're making the decision. I think that's the point of it to me.
Yeah. In general, what genres do you like to review? In general, like, what your favorite, or why do you choose them?
I find most of my favorite movies and TV shows are, I guess with movies, it's more definitively dramas. Serious dramas tend to be my top.
Yeah.
TV shows, I have found that what I like most / think is best are things that ostensibly are comedies, but turn out to be pretty serious in the end. I think that's what I gravitate towards the most. Shows that have, like, humorous parts, or humorous setups, or humorous performers, but halfway through you're like, wait a minute, they're about to make me cry, aren't they? This is going to be like a tough, dramatic moment where I have to do some self-reflection. And I enjoy comedies. It's fun to watch them, and a lot of times tough, serious movies, which I think may be important to be made or to be seen or might affect you, but they're not necessarily fun things to go out on Friday night. That might not be quite as quick to recommend. My group of friends are trying to hang out on Friday. Hey guys, what do you want to do? Let's watch Schindler's List. Like, well, you should watch that, but maybe not for a fun hangout on Friday night. It's not like a date movie, Whereas, I don't know, Ghostbusters is hilarious, maybe even a comedy classic, but maybe not going to win Best Picture, or maybe not going to change your life or anything.
Sorry, someone randomly is knocking. I'm like, what the heck is this? But yeah, no, that's fair. All right, so obviously you do History of Westeros with Aziz. Why choose Game of Thrones to review? Like, what made you get into that?
Well, I have supplanted book reading with film watching in my life. I probably read, I don't know, maybe a book a year, but probably watch a movie a week, or a TV show. I don't know if I quite complete a season a week, but close maybe, for the past several years at least. And obviously books are good. I read a lot more books when I was younger. I don't want to dissuade people from reading, But something I sort of realize and appreciate is that film has elements that books don't. There's pros and cons to both, right? Like in in a book, if you want to describe a scenario or a setting or a visual, an image, like me on your screen right now on a book to describe, like, I don't know, my beard and the posters in the background, the shirt that I'm wearing, the emotions on my face, the lighting, all that kind of stuff. It would take pages to really convey all that. But you do it in one instant. You just do it automatically on film. And so it can be way more efficient on film in certain ways. Um, but in a book, if you wanted to talk about my emotions or my thoughts, my internal dialogue, that you could just do. You could just write what I'm thinking in a book. But on film, that would be not impossible, but very difficult and would take longer. That is maybe the mark of a great actor and a great director is you're able to convey emotions and thoughts on film. Sometimes you use narration, but um, but in a book, there's no music, there's no editing. There are these elements of filmmaking that can add a lot to a story, to a tone, and to an emotion that books just don't get. And for better or worse, that draws me more toward film. And
Right.
and so, but because of that, it means I don't read as many books. And when I do read books, I tend to try to read classics. I feel like I shouldn't be bothering around with some book that came out 2 years ago when I haven't read all of Shakespeare or whatever. I feel like I need a good foundation. And so this Game of Thrones series, which I guess at this point has been out 25 years or something. I guess that's somewhat
Yeah.
established. I
Yeah.
don't
Like
know.
the books you're referring to.
Right. The books, the TV show Game of Thrones is based on a series of books. I guess technically there's only one book called A Game of Thrones. It's the first book in a series. And I think the series is collectively called A Song of Ice and Fire. And there's some ancillary books in the collection. But anyway, point is, I have a lot of friends that do read books and they love fantasy. I used to work at a game store. I do love sci-fi, fantasy, nerdy stuff in general. And most of my friends do, go figure. And a lot of my friends and fellow coworkers had read these books, and this TV show was coming out, done by HBO, who's got a really good track record for quality television shows, and they all convinced me that I'm gonna love this series. I need to watch it, and so I did, and I did watch it, and I did love it, and and a couple seasons in, Aziz started. There's more details to the background of the podcast, but basically, he started a podcast covering. He's really trying to cover the book, but when the
Yeah.
show's out, we're not going to ignore that. And we would have discussions about it, and a lot of times I would have some, like, I don't know, unique or significantly different insights or opinions on things than him and other people who had read these books like 10 years ago and had years to develop theories and opinions and expectations. But I'm just watching the show for the first time, and so something that they would maybe be distracted or disappointed by, to me, wasn't a problem at all because I didn't have an expectation. And so that would spark some interesting discussions among us, so much so that we decided to have the discussions on the podcast. Just most of the people watching the show haven't read the books, and so my opinion might be a little bit more in sync with the majority of the audience. And so he decided to start including me on a podcast, and it went from there. I should
That's
clarify at
awesome.
this point, I have read all of the main books. I still haven't read all the ancillary books.
Oh,
Like,
you read book 1 through 5?
yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I knew you were in the process of doing that, but I didn't know you actually have read them all.
Yeah, I've read through all the main novels, and but for example, this new series, this spin-off prequel series, House of the Dragon, is for the most part based on this other book called Fire and Blood, and it's the main Game of Thrones series. It's like 200 years prior to the main Game of Thrones series, and the thing is, George Martin has developed such an expansive world that even before he wrote this Fire and Blood book, the main series would reference it every now and then. This Dance of the Dragons, like this civil war from the past, and these different characters. This guy has this very fully fleshed out world, and I think that's part of why he ends up writing these secondary books, because he wants to get it all out, even if it's not specifically connected to the plot line of Jon Snow and Arya Stark or whatever. He still has this world he wants to share. But he wrote this Fire and Blood book, which is interesting on its own because it comes from different perspectives. So, and they're all unreliable narrators. So it's
Yeah, I
hard to
love that.
exactly know the truth of things. And so this new series that's coming out, even someone who's read the books and has these expectations from the TV show, you can't really be too stuck to those expectations because you're basing it off conflicting, unrelatable narrators. So the show is almost like a fourth telling of the story that you can't necessarily discount just because it doesn't match up to the original book. But anyway, there are key plot points the book does cover that I don't want to spoil myself on, so I haven't read it yet. Not sure if I will for the next season. I don't know if I'll be able to get through another year
You want to?
without
They
being
call you
spoiled
like
and stuff anyway.
like
But
they want you to have a fresh eye on how to look at
right,
things without
yeah,
being skewed by the content, which
yeah,
is cool.
yeah.
Uh, and I think that's what made.
That's been a general opinion of mine, I guess, when it comes because it commonly when a movie comes out based on a book, people are disappointed with the movie. And it sort of makes sense because a book can have so much more material and can get so much more into the heads of characters, and movies have more budget limitations and on and on. But the thing is that if the movie's good, it's good. I'm not trying to judge did this movie follow the book. I'm trying to judge is this movie good. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I can see how maybe you're disappointed if the movie isn't as good as the book. Like, say the book was a 10 to you or whoever, right? And the movie was only an 8. Okay, that's a disappointment, but an 8 is good. A movie that's an 8 is good. That's really, really good, even if it's not as good as the book. So
Exactly. Awesome. So who or what inspires you to do what you do?
Oh, that's a tough question. That's a good question. I don't know, maybe in a general way, filmmakers inspire me. I really appreciate when they blow my mind sometimes when I realize like, some seed that was planted early on blooms later on, like, oh wow, that was so good, or some parallel or symbolism that I didn't catch at first, or when they can evoke an emotion in me, or on some level, maybe my English teacher that got me to think about. I mentioned that earlier, but I
Yeah.
remember a lot of times, like in high school, I feel like a lot of the tests are just to check and see if you read the book. Like who was the main character? What city was it set in, something like that. But I had this teacher that would add that she just assumed we read the book. Of course, you read the book. She expected us to read the author's biography. She expected us to read 2 other books by the same author to create parallels and and I don't know. I guess Miss Sinclair, if she's out there still, she inspired me. Maybe my dad. I think that my dad has an analytical mind, and a lot of times he has interesting takes that I hadn't considered that make me look at something a new way. I don't know. I guess I kind of want to do that too.
No, that's fair. All right. What? Yeah, tell us about some of your, just in general, your reviews. History of Westeros, the process of it. Like, how do you set up when you do a review, stuff like that.
Well, for History of Westeros, it was it started off for me just going along with the TV show. Just there would be an episode of the show, and even before we started, before I started reviewing it and doing the podcast, I was still watching every episode 2 or 3 or 4 times at least. I was taking notes, had charts, and I was getting pretty into it. I would say that I didn't exactly have a good process at first, but over the years it's evolved a little bit. But first I just want to watch it just to take it in, just as a fan, just to enjoy it. You can't help, or I especially can't help, some analytical gears from turning. But
Yeah.
then I'll watch it a second time. We'll all pause it and take notes and think a little deeper, looking for certain angles. I just studying film. Again, there's a lot of like aspects of film that are pretty easy to apply to television. Things like there's this term called mise en scène. It's a French word that I think even predates film. I think it's like a stage term. I think it means like what's on the set or something to that effect.
Yeah.
Translates something like, what do you see on the stage, and it encompasses a lot of stuff like, the lighting, I don't know, the angle, the costumes, uh, doesn't quite it doesn't cover, say, music, dialogue, but those are other elements. I try to think of all the different elements of filmmaking and literature and everything as I watch it, and I try to account for those. And there's a tendency to be plot centric. Most people, when they're watching stuff, you're thinking about what happens and who's doing it. You're thinking about characters and plot. Those are the main things.
Yeah.
But a lot can be drawn out when you start looking at details in the background, things that you don't even realize the effect that music has on you,
Yeah.
when someone comes on screen, or the lack of music can have, um, but anyway, I'll usually watch it at least a second or third time, trying to dig out details and find references, or, Easter eggs have become a popular term these days.
Mhm.
Trying to find, meaning beyond what's on the surface. Trying to think maybe on a meta level, like I think sometimes about like why the director might have made this decision, especially when you're talking about like converting from book to film, like why didn't they include this character, or why they consolidated these characters. And usually you need it's something that has depth in the first place. There's no way you're going to get it all in just one watching. So if it's something I think is really good and I really care about, I'm going to watch it 2 or 3 times.
Yeah. No.
And when I expect to be reporting on it, if you will, I want to make sure I'm getting it all in and putting it all back out. So
Yeah. Yeah. No. Absolutely. Were there any moments that stood out to you when you did History of Westeros, like best moments? Throughout the years you've been doing it with Game of Thrones and House of Dragons or House of Dragons,
hmm.
and vice versa. The hardest moments, stuff that was challenging to you.
Well, are you? It's hard to separate maybe favorite moments of the shows that I've been watching versus my favorite moments being involved with them.
Yeah, it could be behind the scenes.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be directly uh when you were live, I guess. Um,
Sometimes it gets lost, and then all
okay.
the material. Man, I can't even guess how many scores and scores. I've probably done hundreds
Mhm.
of episodes now. It's weird to think about. Sorry, this is a little diversion from your question, but
Yeah.
we started off just doing the TV show. And by the way, I remember as the TV show was coming to a close, or like when this, people would ask, what are you guys going to do now? What are you going to talk about when the show's over? And we're like, oh man, you have no idea how much material there is in
Mhm.
this world. Like, even ignoring the books, right? Even if you just wanted to be covering a show and not
Yeah.
cover the books, rather than just do one episode to the next episode or whatever, think of all the things you could cover. Like, you do an episode on the Lannisters, the Starks, like all the different houses, right? You can
Yep.
do an episode on like the castles. You can do an episode on dragons. You could do, you know what I mean? There's all these little slices of the show that you could like feature.
Yeah.
And when you add the books, you think there's less of that, like there's
Oh,
so much more.
exactly.
So when the show ended and I did read the books, I have been more active in all that, because even aside from the show, like History of Westeros, the podcast puts out a lot of material on the books,
Yeah.
and I've become much more involved with that now the show's over and I've read the books. And I don't know, I'd say maybe that's a highlight, to get even more involved in a community, and maybe connected to that too. Is I started off trying to be Unsullied, which is fun. It's also fun. It's a weird thing, because things that might be highlight moments for me, I don't really know of them. Okay, let me see how I can say this. When something happens in the show, and I'm kind of analyzing it and thinking about where the show is going with that,
Yeah.
people who've read the books, they know I'm right about that, but they don't want to spoil it for me,
Mhm.
right? So if I had known how accurately I was predicting things, that would have been a proud moment. But I never knew. I never knew that I was like nailing it.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, but connected to that is the idea that I did eventually join the social media. Like, I got on Twitter. I started getting more interactive with the crowd that's out there. and which is huge. There's a huge community. I'd say Game of Thrones, but Star Wars, Star Trek. Everyone out there's got their fan of video games and on and on and on. It's an interesting world that we live in, that we can have these connected communities around these different fandoms. But I was avoiding that at first, but I kind of dove in, and there wasn't like maybe 1 minute of that was a highlight, but as a whole, that was sort of a highlight for me to become more involved with all of it. I say one negative part was, it's almost cliche, and I don't want to dwell on it too much, but season 8 was kind of disappointing for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I will say, in my opinion, I feel like they were faltering a little bit in season 5. I don't think everything was perfect till season 7, and then season 8 ruined it.
No.
I don't want to spoil too much for people who haven't seen it, but the plot line with the Sand Snakes in season 5 was like, that was a little rough. And the plot line with Arya in season 6 was like, that was a little rough.
Yeah.
So I didn't feel like it suddenly got bad in season 8. I feel like there were some slacking parts throughout.
Yeah.
And even the bad parts in season 8, it still had a bunch of good parts too. It was still amazing in a lot of ways. But we didn't want our podcast to just be bad-mouthing a show. We were still trying to be supportive.
Yeah.
But it was kind of tough. It was kind of tough when they were doing things that were frustrating, and when a lot of the fans were turning against it.
Mm-hmm.
It was tough for us to stay positive anyway. I think we did a pretty good job of it. But I would say that was like a tough moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fair. All right. So we're gonna start the quick 20 questions. There's a little segment where I will fire away 20 questions. You answer off the top of your head what I ask. It gets from easy to pretty complex, Okay. So we'll go from there. Are you ready?
I think we'll see.
All right, here we go. Favorite color?
Blue.
Favorite
Green's
food?
close. Oh, favorite food. Can I say bread?
Yes.
Is bread's like part of so many other things?
That's fair. Favorite candy?
Chocolate.
Favorite music?
Mm.
Could be a subcategory thing technically too.
That's tough. I just cannot name one. I'll throw out metal, hip hop, and drum and bass.
All right. So you like music in general, that makes.
Oh yeah, I love it.
Favorite game?
I'd probably have to say Magic the Gathering.
All right.
But,
I like that. Yeah, most people point out like a video game, but this is actually any game. So yes, I like that answer. Favorite music? I'm sorry, music.
You already said that.
Yeah. Favorite movie, I meant to say.
I have as my number one movie. I talked earlier about the difference between favorite and top and best or whatever, but in almost any standard, any measure, Star Trek is Star Trek. Well, Star Trek is too, but Star Wars is very near the top. And since it's so high in almost any category, I have to pick a one overall. Star Wars: A New Hope. I think that's probably my favorite movie.
What I was thinking. Favorite show?
Better Call Saul.
Yep.
Better Call Saul. Office is a close second.
Nice. Favorite actor or actress?
I don't know. That's tough. Probably Tom Hanks.
That's fair. Yeah.
I feel like that's kind of a generic answer, but I might come up with something if I thought about it more.
Awesome. Favorite historical figure?
Maybe Carl Sagan.
Oh, nice. Chicken or beef? I know this answer for you.
Neither.
That's fair. You're Sean's vegetarian.
I don't eat meat. So.
Yeah.
Bread.
Mountains or ocean?
Mountains.
Nice. Samurai or ninja?
I don't know. I'm gonna say samurai. I think.
All right. Donuts or ice cream?
Ooh, man, that's tough. Yes. Say both.
Both. All right. Dinosaurs or aliens?
Aliens.
Boobs or butts?
Butts.
All right. Why is the sky blue?
Because of how light refracts through the atmosphere. Also, it's not always and only blue.
Ooh. Why is
Trick
candy?
question, loaded question.
It is. Why is candy so good?
Because our body needs energy, and candy has sugar.
Why are people human? I'm a Foxarian, so I need to know this.
Why are people
Human.
I think it's just a part of the definition. I don't know how to answer that one.
Why are we so tiny but so big?
Because of relativity.
All right. And the last question. Why are you amazing?
Because you're my friend.
Aw. All right, back to the questions. So if you were to interview anyone like just now, who would it be?
Like
Anyone. It could be
any
actor, it could be director, it could be writer, it could be
like could it be someone from the past? Can I choose Carl Sagan again?
Yes, actually you could.
All right, that might be who I pick.
Awesome. Actually, why then?
Say why?
Yeah.
Because I think that he is a well versed in a lot of different topics and is worried about the future of humanity. I think those two things combined, I think that he has a certain awe and respect for what we've done so far, but a certain concern about where we're going, and he has a huge amount of insight into it. So
that's awesome. Let's see. If you were to give anyone advice on what you do, reviewing, critiquing, what would it be?
Advice on what I do?
Mm-hmm.
Man, I need to take my own advice. Probably do it more. It's hard to get motivated. It's hard to initiate. Every now and then I get kind of fired up, and I'll put a bunch of things out at once, but then I'll go weeks or months without doing anything. I don't know. It's weird. It's weird to analyze yourself and how or why you find motivation, especially with something like this, because you don't get direct feedback or reward from it.
Mm-hmm.
Most jobs, you go to work, you work X hours, and then you get paid for X hours, pretty quickly, pretty consistently.
Yeah.
Sometimes at work, you get other sorts of, reinforcement, positive or negative. You mess something up and someone yells at you, you do something well, someone gives you an attaboy. But when you record a video and put it on YouTube, 2 people watch it. And I'm like, okay, well, I spent 4 hours researching and 1 hour recording, and 2 people saw that, and I guess I'll do that again. I don't know.
No, that's fair. It is very hard being.
And then every now and then you get 800 people watching. You're like, why'd they watch that one? I don't know. I put the same amount of effort into that one as the other one. Why aren't you watching my other one? I don't know. It can be hard to predict and seems random, and but I guess just keep plugging away at it.
Yeah. Do what you love. So this is more questions on you, life. What do you like to do?
Well, I like to do a lot of things, I suppose. But obviously, watching movies and TV shows and talking about them, I love. That's part of why you have me on here, because I love so much to watch all this stuff and figure out why one thing is good or bad, and recommend. Think about what to recommend to other people. But without going on too much of a tangent about that, I also love a lot of other things like yoga, dancing. And I guess I like games. I mentioned Magic earlier. I play a lot of chess. So, that's been worked at a game store for half my life. That was a big part of my life. I love fitness and dancing and yoga, like I said, and I live in Colorado now, so hiking and mountainous type stuff, that's a newer thing for me, but I appreciate that. I'm planning on going to the Grand Canyon with my dad next year. That'll be awesome. An adventure. I guess I like cooking. 3 cats. Love my cats. Of my wife, by the way, I met her through the Game of Thrones community. I guess I should probably point that out as a highlight of my life and my to the flow of where my life is taking me.
Yeah.
It's something that was a cool, fun part of Game of Thrones. You know, from doing the reviews and the community that's online, there's also cons. I'm sure people are at least vaguely aware of the idea that every now and then groups of people get together for some common interest. There's huge things like Dragon Con and Comic Con, and there's smaller ones, probably a bunch that I'm not even aware of, but for different video games or different anime and so on. And but there's Game of Thrones cons. I just got back from one last week, probably where I got sick and that travel. Tested a couple times, not positive for COVID, thank goodness. But anyway, going to cons is really fun. It's really, really cool to get together with a bunch of like-minded people with a similar interest, and a lot of content is covered and presented at these moments, and it's a good place to like network and meet people, and a lot of cool imagery and on and on. They're really great fun.
What silly things make you happy?
I don't know. I don't know. What do you call those things? TikToks sometimes. Just silly TikToks make me happy. Yeah. Cat videos and dance videos and stuff like that. Find you know what though? Like you probably don't necessarily mean the question to be that deep, but I think that silly things usually bring you joy, not happiness. I think happiness is deeper.
Oh, that's fair. How did you get your name, Dancing Sean? Like, where did that come about?
Well, I love to dance. It's kind of weird just reflecting on it myself, but I just got into breakdancing at one point. I was just like going out to clubs, going out to listen to different music, and just would see like these guys. I came to learn, and we're like a crew, and they knew each other, and they knew the music, and they knew the venues and the schedule and the DJs, and I was like, they were just so cool and so fun. It's like, man, I want to do that too. So kept going out more and meeting those same people and listening to those same music and watching videos, and I just kind of got into it for a little phase and kind of became my hobby as much as anything. And I kind of branched out a lot just from breakdancing. I feel like that's like maybe a page in my book.
Yeah.
But breakdancing can be kind of competitive and macho sometimes, and I'm just trying to have fun and groove to the music. And there's all sorts of styles from modern to salsa and on and on. I've discovered even more. My wife's a Zumba instructor, so I've learned all kinds of new types of music from that, and all kinds of choreos that go with it, and styles of dance. And anyway, when I was like deciding to engage more with social media, I was making a Twitter account and everything, I was trying to come up with a name, and I just thought of Dancing Sean, and stuck. It's just been kind of my thing. And maybe you can even like you can like dance can mean more than just like on a dance floor with music. Its meaning can be like to like move around, or to skirt around, or to like be part of different things. Dancing around things. It can be a broader meaning, but almost any meaning I feel can fit to me.
That's awesome. Let's see. Just kind of going back to like inspire you, but is there someone you look up to?
My dad. I'll probably come back to him a lot for this type of question.
No, that's fair.
There's probably been a few people through my life. Like, I don't want to be too cheesy, but you're one of them. I appreciate people that like work really hard and have a good sense of, I don't know, a good moral center or whatever. And
yeah, no, that's fair. This is going to go on to, so we've worked on a project together, Creepy Dolls.
Yeah.
What were your impressions of that? Thoughts?
It was a really great learning experience. I don't know, to fill the audience in a little, we worked together on the script.
Yeah.
And I think I had worked with you a little bit, a very minor amount, but excuse me, sorry.
That's fine.
On the Neon Dead, I was more just tagging along with you, and you had a group of friends that were working on this sort of epic adventure horror movie.
Yes.
And I remember one night out there, like running cables for lights into the woods, and all the different pieces to get this
Yeah.
scene filmed, and I understand, but part of my appreciation for film comes from knowing the effort that goes into it. I'm rambling a little bit here, but I think I pointed out that I tend to prefer, I don't know, I want to be moved by a film. I want to like learn a new thing or think of a thing in a new way. I want to gain a new insight into human nature, or learn about some slice of life that someone's living out there that I'm not familiar with. Rather than something that's just cool or funny. I'm not as interested in just seeing a car chase scene, or
Yeah.
a sword fight or something, as I am in watching someone have a moral dilemma between stealing this food or their family starving or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And the type of thing that I want to get out of film doesn't usually need a big budget. It doesn't, it can be done with a small set, a small cast, a small budget.
Yeah.
And it's almost frustrating to me when you have these huge $100 million budgets and these big directors and these big stars. You just make like an okay action movie. I'm like, man, you could have done something. Could have won Best Picture. You could have done something more important with that. Uh, Something I might have given an 8, I'll end up giving a 7 because I feel like they didn't complete their potential.
Yeah.
Whereas something that maybe would only be a 7, when I realized they did it on a shoestring budget, I might give them a full 8 because wow, you did a good job with what you're working with there.
Yeah.
Uh, but anyway, I got a more firsthand experience of that working with you on that film and in writing the script. Uh, realizing how much you have to account for everything. But when you had the idea, basically it's like a haunted house sort of scenario.
Yep.
And I think at the time I was like marathoning It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, so I had those characters and that kind of harebrained, frantic mentality of
Yeah.
that show in mind. That as we worked out that script, and I wish I could remember the details now, but I think we were trying to make it 20 pages or something. And of course, our first draft is like 35 pages. And so, first you want to like trim down lines.
Yep.
You want to cut out on lines and take out the spaces or whatever. You're like editing grammar and stuff to narrow. All right, we got it from 35 down to 30. We still have to get it down to 20. How can?
Yep.
And you realize you have to cut out entire scenes. And you have to cut out entire characters.
Mm.
All right, we got it down to like 22. And but in the end, I didn't feel like when we watched it that something was missing. I think we hit all the beats. We got in all the imagery, all the characters, all the jokes that were really needed to tell that story.
Yeah.
And I think about that a lot whenever you see deleted scenes from a movie or a TV show. I usually, even more so since that experience with you, I feel like, yeah, I see why they cut that. I see why they did that. There's even a part of me that generally I tend to like longer movies. Like some people are like 2.5 hours. I'm not sitting there that long, but to me, I'm like, yeah, that's more my. Why can't it be 3.5 hours? Like,
Right.
if I can get more for my money, I'm getting more of a story, more of a character development. But I understand that's me, and the average film goer doesn't want something that long. And so, everyone is making a movie. They're not making it for me. And in fact, that's sort of an interesting question, artistic question. What are you making a movie for, or any piece of art? Are you making it just for yourself?
Mhm.
Are you making it for the people that are watching? Are you making it for money? And the thing is that it could be any or any mix of all of those.
Yeah.
If you're really just making it for yourself, why are you putting it in the theater? Like,
Mhm.
and if you want to, let's say you theoretically just want to make it for yourself. Well, okay, good luck getting actors and directors and all the budget and all the money for that.
Exactly.
You're gonna have to make some compromises.
Yeah. Yeah. Like when
It's
like
a
a producer
collaborative
gives
effort.
you
There's
money,
yeah.
that they may want something there. Like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, I always hear about the story about Wild Wild West. Wait, was it Wild Wild West? Was Will Smith?
Yeah.
Someone was like, actually, this is Kevin Smith. I think he was wanting to make a Superman movie, if I'm correct. and they're like, let's put a spider in it. He's like, I'm out. He like just walked out. You know, he's like, this is ridiculous. And then Wild Wild West comes out. You know, I remember soon after, and obviously there's a big spider in that movie, a robot spider.
It was the same filmmaker, the same producer that he was working with to make a Superman movie that ended up getting scrapped.
Yeah.
That same producer made the Wild Wild West movie and somehow worked in a giant spider.
Exactly. And obviously that was one, it was so stupid. Like why? You know?
Yeah.
And of course, sometimes producers just want what they want and they're paying the bills.
And
so you gotta have to do it.
Yeah. Not only paying the bills, but they're part of the collaborative effort too, right?
Yep.
Like as a director, like it's on some level it's your movie, but on some level it's the actor's movie and the producer's movie and the editor's movie, and they all have these different things they want to do, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, if you're, you know, good and lucky and whatever else enough that someone like Steven Spielberg, he's got that control, right? He can edit it how he wants. He can do the budget and hire.
Exactly.
You know, he can get more of what he wants out of it. But a younger filmmaker, you know, if you kind of want to do it, Kevin Smith, when he made Clerks, he was just doing it like on his mom's credit card, you know. And that's an example of why I will give that movie a higher rating, even if it was maybe like, I don't know, poorly edited and, you know, kind of cheesy or corny or lowbrow. But it's just some dude with his friends. Like, I don't necessarily expect it to be Best Picture, but I don't expect it to be as good as it was either. And so, you know, I'll give Clerks an 8, even if, you know, quote unquote, in a vacuum, maybe it was only a 6 or something.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, someone makes a Wild Wild West, and I don't know, maybe if you account for all the effort and money and talent that went into that, maybe it's a 7 or 8. But man, that movie, it's when you consider the potential it had, I want to give it a 6 or a 4 even, you know, like you should have done a lot better.
No, definitely. I remember in Creepy Dolls when we were writing scripts. So, you know, Creepy Dolls is part of an anthology, Dead by Midnight. And so, you know, I remember you threw out, you're like, let's tell a story within a story, you know, because it's a short. And I thought it was going to be like a chronological situation, but you always make me rack my brain and like really think. I'm like, man, that's actually an interesting. I don't think I've even like really seen that. It's a good thing. Like, you know, like I always love your insight on stuff. And we went that route too when we made that. You know, like it was a character that was telling a story of what happened in the house, which was a fun, like, you know, just tool to use to tell a story, you know. And that was one of the best parts of the story, personally, you know, jumping back and forth.
It gave us the ability to slow roll the reveal. You know, we know something dire, scary, or tragic, or whatever happened, because we see someone like frantic and bloodied, you know.
Yeah.
But we slowly reveal what it was, and it gives a different set of interactions. It gives us the ability to make you can use editing for effect better, you know, whether it's comedy or suspense or whatever, when you're cutting back and forth and etc.
Yeah. Like obviously it's a storytelling too, so you could exaggerate stuff. It may have not happened this way, but it's a story, so it
gives you an unreliable narrator.
Exactly.
So
this actually goes to the history of History of Westeros.
Fire and Blood.
Fire and Blood. Yeah. I mean, because there was a jester and there was a maester. Maesters are going to be more accurate, but the jester, he's just telling a fun story. He could be completely making it up, if all we know. But if it's entertaining.
But the maester might be more accurate, but he might be more motivated to put a spin on it.
Exactly.
Right?
Especially
he doesn't want to make the king look bad or whatever, but the jester just wants to tell a funny story. So he might say something that the maester wouldn't. Yeah.
But obviously it's fun, like when you could do stuff like that. Did you see Heroes of Time? I know.
Did I see what?
Heroes of Time, the sequel. No. I know you were moving around the time, so I can't remember if you saw.
Oh, the next film that you guys were working on.
Yeah.
I think I got to see some clips of it here and there that you showed me as you were going through the editing process, but I don't think I've seen a complete thing.
I know you've read it, you know, because he at least was part of, at least, like, you know, helping me brainstorm, you know, ideas and that. But I can't remember if you saw it or not. So we have done a Better Call Saul review. We did the last season of Better Call Saul, So obviously I've collabed with Dancing Sean before. Oh heck yeah. But without going into much detail, well, what was your experience working with me on a review? And Better Call Saul.
It was great. It was great. It's it's always fun to review a show that you really love, and you really love it because it's so great. And Better Call Saul is the epitome of that.
Mhm.
And I, I don't know. I feel like your experience in film legitimizes that. I get, the
Yeah,
fact that you also feel like Better Call Saul is really great. That
yeah,
you're also seeing the sorts of efforts and details and nuances that they're covering with that show, and for us to be able to work together to pick it apart and pay homage to it was really fun.
yeah, yeah,
It was a great show, and it's great to do it with you.
yeah. Highly recommend watching those, or just watching the show if you have not watched it. Because it is, me and him talked about, but it's probably the best show that's been made. There's great shows out there, but I mean, this just does everything right. It feels like.
Yeah,
Uh,
again, I think about, when you say the best or my favorite or whatever, sometimes it's hard to quantify. Again, let's just even say that's, I don't know, something like Casablanca. Like, that's on the top, or Citizen Kane.
yeah,
Those are classics that most film critics would agree. If it's not the best, it's like top 10 or whatever.
yeah,
But I can imagine huge slices, especially modern audiences. If you're not like a film buff, or you don't care about film history or whatever, movies might just be boring to you.
mm,
And maybe a movie that's more modern or exciting, something like No Country for Old Men, that yeah, even modern critics think
mm,
that is a great movie,
yeah,
but it's pretty intense and kind of violent. Like, I wouldn't recommend that to my mom or my niece.
yeah,
So, and that's part of why I put Star Wars up so high, because it's pretty broad as far as who you can recommend it to. Does
yeah,
that make sense?
yeah, yeah. Kids or adults, yeah,
Right. And so, if you don't really care about crime dramas, that's pretty broad. Crime drama is pretty broad, what that could cover. But fundamentally, I would say that's what Better Call Saul is, a crime drama. And if you just don't like crime dramas, all right, you might not like Better Call Saul. Like, even if it is quote unquote the best show,
mm,
you might not like that, right? And I think I might be able to argue that The Office is more my favorite
yeah,
than Better Call Saul. But I do think, if you could try to be objective, I think that production, as far as like the set design, the cinematography, the costume, the
mhm,
lighting, the editing, all the sort of aspects that go into filmmaking. I'm generally calling that the production.
mm,
The performances, the writing, I
yeah,
think, are the best. I think those three things, which cover almost everything there is about a show,
yeah,
uh,
yeah,
I think Better Call Saul did that better than any other show. And maybe there's some show out there that had better writing, but not better production also. And there might be some other show that had better production, but not better writing also. I think that show really did have the highest combination of writing, production, and performances of any other show.
yeah,
And so, it might not be the best show insofar as a lot of people won't like it because they don't like crime dramas, or a lot of people don't have the patience for a drama with a slow burn, or Better Call Saul did, even though it's basically a drama, it did have some sort of comedic elements to it. Maybe some people won't like that unevenness. They want it to be straight serious and violent without the comedic uh um uh comic relief or whatever. Or some people want there to be more comedy and not some of the violence that was included with the drug cartels or whatever. There's reasons I can see for someone to not like it. Like almost any show, it's hard to find a show that everyone always likes, no matter what. Uh, but however much an individual might like it, or however recommendable it might be to the masses, or however much it might be your favorite, I don't. I think quantifiably, if you look at the production quality, the performances, and the writing, I think it's the best show of all time.
yeah. And I agree.
There's never been a show that's more worth rewatching. I don't
Yep.
think there's ever been a show that had as much uh, built on itself so well. I think each season made the prior seasons even better. I think it did such a great job of. There were a lot of moments which would be surprising as they occurred, but when you reflect on them, it was almost inevitable.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I think,
Yeah,
and I think that's one of the best things a show can do is surprise you, but not trick you. Right? It can
yes.
do something that, in retrospect, makes perfect sense, but you still didn't see it coming. And I
It,
think Better Call Saul does a better job of that than any other show.
you know, this is another show that I think is very good, but it doesn't deliver on the back end. Game of Thrones, A Song of Ice and Fire. Well, I should actually say Song of Ice and Fire actually delivers. I feel because that's the book, but and we don't even know if how it's going to conclude. We could predict, but that's a whole nother story. But Game of Thrones set up a lot of stuff, and so when things happen, you're like, of course that was going to happen. That makes sense. Still, we're shocked, but it made sense. The later half of the seasons, they lost that, I felt. And that was like some of the biggest issues with that.
Yeah.
You know, like we were like, well, we set it up in season 5. You're like, no, you didn't. Or it was lazy, you know, stuff like that. But like, and so like obviously when things happened in the later seasons, you're just like, that doesn't make any sense. I mean, it actually just doesn't make really that much sense because you didn't set it up that way, you know. And so it's really hard, you know. Even if you could come up like with a good script and have these elements, but like Better Call Saul is like masterclass on that, you know, of how much they set up and how much they connected. Even like Breaking Bad, like they did stuff that, and I feel like enhanced Breaking Bad because of how good Better Call Saul was done, you know, with certain characters even, you know.
No, I don't want to spoil Game of Thrones for anyone who might have not seen it, but you know, if you have seen it, you know what I mean. At the end of season 1, something happens that I feel like, and you know, in a vacuum, if you will, was obvious. Of course, that was going to happen.
Yep.
The only reason you're surprised is because your expectations from media in general.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Like I don't know how to say this, but I don't know, you expect the good guys to win, if you will. You know, kind of like, here's the good guys, here's the bad guys, here's your main character, and you just go, right?
Yeah.
But Game of Thrones is like, not necessarily.
Yeah.
Get ready.
Yeah, you're
We're
right.
going to surprise you.
How would this realistically happen?
Right.
I'll show you.
It's more like a logical progression of what all these, you know, if you given it, you have this setting and these characters and his personality and his history and his background, given you have all that, let's see how it will play out.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not necessarily trying to fit the mold of media, of expectations. And that makes it feel more real and more believable. I don't know, more meaningful and more exciting or whatever when it's done that way.
I remember, not also spoiling it, but there was like something in season 4 that like a lot of people were like, well, and this is kind of close to the, you know, the last episodes. They're like, well, it could go this way, but I mean, but these are involving main characters, so should it go this other way? The fight stuff. Or the trial-based situation.
Oh, yes. That also was,
and like you said, it makes complete sense on how it played out. But I remember, but it could have also made sense if it played out a different way. But it just made most sense how it played out. you know,
it definitely was an example of something that, especially the way things have been going. By the time you get to that point, you have no idea. It's so exciting because you can't really. I spent a lot of time. It took me a minute to realize what you're talking about. But leading up to that episode, going back and forth, like, you know, what is going to happen? Because they sort of set up, you know, this conflict, if you will, and going back and forth and what I thought was going to happen. And anyway.
Yeah. This is fantastic writing.
We're dancing around these shows without spoiling them.
But in general, we're coming to a close. I always think that Sean is. This is maybe too big to say, but like I feel like he's a philosophy of this time. You know, a philosopher. You know, a lot of stuff he thinks is just insightful. You know, to me, I feel like it's important to the world. I wish more people could hear him. In general, this stuff how you think, you know. I think on how you you talk about movies. I love how Aziz has gotten you, to get involved in that, because I think your insight is important and it's insightful and it's just fun, you know. Um, but
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. That is, so I don't know if this is a semi-random thought, but it's something I wanted to share that in recent years, so I don't know, in the past 5 years or less, I think there was more new television content put out than the number of hours in a year.
oh wow,
And the point being that you can't. It's not possible to watch all of the stuff that's coming out nowadays. There's so much of it, and so I go through a lot of effort trying to filter out what's the best stuff to watch, watching it and ranking it, so that everyone else doesn't have to filter through a bunch of crap. I'm trying to tell you, this is the good stuff.
yeah,
and I recognize that the good stuff might be different for different people depending on what you're looking for. But that is sort of my goal as a critic, if I can call myself a critic. That's what I want to be, and want the goal of it to be, is to kind of filter out what you or a person will really like based on your interests. Give an idea. That's the thing that inspires me to get a flurry of work done, is when the Academy Awards come out. I want to do a little. I try to watch all this nominees for Best Picture, and then do a little summary of all those movies, like a 1-minute breakdown of, without spoiling a plot, just talking about the type of genre, the type of style, the type of themes or whatever that it's about, to give you an idea. Is this the type of thing you want to watch? Is this a romantic comedy or a sci-fi adventure or a dark drama or whatever it is, to give you a feel? Is this a type of film that you might want to see?
Yeah.
Because I know I'm not the only one. I know there's a lot of people out there that you start scrolling through trying to find what to watch, and you spend like half an hour going through that process. You could have just watched something by the time you decide on something, And so I think it's valuable to get insights from people on what the best things out there are,
Yeah. Yes.
And so I've tried to watch all these sort of established classics, the most popular, the most critically acclaimed, and also the more underground, the more new. I try to watch a wide range of all kinds of stuff, and to get a feel for what's out there and the types of things that are out there, and to have a range of type of stuff to recommend to people. So.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I think it's awesome. All right. Well, we're coming to a close. Things to look forward to. I haven't actually talked to you about this, Sean, but so one of the best potential video games of all time, I'm not sure if you've heard of this, is oh my god, I'm having a blank. Shit, it's a zombie game, not Resident Evil. What the hell am I? Oh my god. Okay, so there's a new series that's coming out on HBO.
The Last of Us.
Thank you. I don't know why I had a blank on that. Have you heard of it? I assume you have. I mean, obviously you just said that. But do you know anything about the video games?
Not much. I in my mind, I wouldn't have called it. Excuse me. Sorry. I wouldn't have called it zombie.
Yeah, it's actually not
I just
zombies.
don't know what to call that. I think of it as post-apocalyptic.
Yes, it is. It's really not zombies. Okay. That's why I threw it up there, because I was like trying to think of what.
Okay.
It's the most closely related to zombies, but it's not zombies at all. It's actually pretty realistic for an apocalyptic if it has creatures in it. But anyways, they're coming out with an HBO show. Has 2 actors from Game of Thrones, Bronn Martell. God, I wish I remember his name off the top of my head.
Pedro Pascal.
Yes, thank you. And the girl who played Mormont.
Mormont. I'm afraid I don't remember her name.
Yeah,
but I know who you mean. Yeah.
And it's going to be out on HBO in January, which I didn't know was this early. I actually thought it was going to be summertime. But I would love to do a review on that show with you, because the game's incredibly good, and if it actually follows along with the game, the source material, it could be a really good show. Like I said, it won awards on game. The second one came out and it got massive controversy. But the first one, everyone who's played it says it's like the best. It's one of the best games of all time. So
I'm hesitant because movies based on video games traditionally are not that great.
They're not.
But
It's
HBO doing it
Yes.
maybe counters that because traditionally HBO only does great stuff. So, or mostly does a lot of great stuff. Yeah.
So we'll talk about it, but that is something that I am looking forward to, and I would like to do a review on when it comes out. So other than that, thanks, Sean, for being here. I love you always.
Thanks for having me.
And anyone out there, you have a good night. Bye bye.